name's Kyle. I'm head coach of Ronin Strength Systems, and we're more or less going to be starting a podcast here called Ronin Strength Speaks. Joining me today is another coach from Ronin Strength Systems, Jared. More or less today we're just going to kind of roll through what this podcast is going to entail, talk a little bit about ourselves, and then kind of get into some strength talk. So, Jared, give us a little run through of what you do and how you came to join the Ronin team.
I'm the assistant coach for Ronin is my official title.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And I came to join Ronin via an older assistant coach who absolutely bodied me in a competition. Scariest man during a cut that I've ever seen. But after that, as I've been with Ronin as a client for like 2.5 years almost now.
Yeah, I think we're about 2.
Yeah. And then through getting to know you and bettering my coaching, my local coaching, it just kind of blossomed into something a little bit bigger. And you reached out to me to be an assistant coach for Ronin. It'd be like, I think it was 8 months ago or so.
Yeah, I think we're almost getting
roughly in that time frame.
Now. Yeah, something of that nature.
Yeah.
So we've come a ways.
And now we're completely overhauling the business and making it bigger.
That's the game plan. Yeah, we're definitely trying to become the prominent coaching team, at least in Western Canada, for sure, for strongman and strength-specific stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of great coaches out in this neck of the woods in other strength sports and stuff like that, but I feel like we're building a pretty good roster for strongman-specific people, I would say. So more or less, I think we can kind of start off with talking a little bit about what got us into strength sports. I mean, it's the typical run-of-the-mill, what everyone tends to do in these things, but it's always good to give a little insight of what we've done, that kind of stuff. I could kind of start, and then we can segue from there if you want. That'd be the simplest way to do it, I think.
Sure.
So more or less, yeah, I started way back in like 2011 in high school. I started with boxing actually in 2010, and then transitioned into strongman via high school. Where I'm from in Chilliwack, started secondary. One of the teachers had put on a strongman contest for probably almost 10 years up to that point prior to my arrival. It's the start of secondary strongman contest, and Bob Fitzsimmons was his name. So more or less, they needed additional athletes. They had a little bit lower numbers that year, and I was taking strength and conditioning, which was a class where we more or less got to work out and stuff like that. So I was like, what can I lose? I had a couple friends doing it. Did it the first year, did terribly. I weighed like 110 pounds soaking wet darn near. But it was one of those things like being out in the crowd, doing unique stuff. It was really the spectators, stuff like that. It's a spectator sport. You get to put on a show, and that's pretty cool. Everyone sees things that are unique or awkward, and they're like, wow, that looks heavy and hard to lift. So it's one of those things that carried on from there. I did it the following year, and then happened to meet a local strongman, Scott Wallace, in the following years. Ended up doing my first official regional contest in, believe it was 2015 or 2016, which was King of the Valley in Chilliwack, and then pretty much been doing it ever since then. Won a national championship, just won a provincial championship because I didn't necessarily prioritize those before. But yeah, and worked with a wide variety of people up until that point in time. I've been doing strength coaching for getting on almost a decade now as a primary career, and Ronin itself has existed for about 5 years now, and we've kind of put together a reasonable roster of provincial champions, national champions, and a couple world record holders even. So yeah, it's been quite the exciting ride, and not something I ever thought from at least high school, Kyle, wouldn't have ever thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now, that's for certain. So
110-pound Kyle didn't expect to be 230.
No, definitely not. Not in his wildest dreams. He was happy to hit like 175.
Good times. I used to be there.
Yeah. So then what kind of got you into working out and stuff like that? Did it start in school? Did it start with other sports? What was the kind of
working out initially just started with me being petty towards other people that would just constantly complain about not having tone or not having abs. And I'm just like, why don't you just do something about it? And, they don't. I'm like, okay, well, screw you guys, I guess. I'm just going to go and take my own advice and do that. And then it started as every teenager does in their parents' basement, just doing a bunch of push-ups and sit-ups.
The classic.
Yeah. It turned into going to the gym, did the starting strength program that so many people start with, just a bunch of barbell movements, and that's about it. COVID hit, so I started all that stuff at 15, 16.
Yeah.
COVID hit when I was 19-ish, so I had a good few solid years in the gym. Mm-hmm. And then they all shut down, so I started just doing calisthenics and trying to learn all the weird, wacky street lifts that you can do, because I had nothing else to progress with. I was only 150 pounds at that time, and I could do every single strength-type calisthenics lift you can imagine.
Yeah.
Everything opens back up. Big old career flip happens. I end up getting into coaching, and the first gym that I worked at here was, at the time, the only one that had strongman equipment. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that when I started there. It just happenstance. And then the guy that owns that gym decided to bring back the local strongman competitions that had been gone for, it was a good 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And him, along with everybody else that is local to this area, just started bullying me into trying to compete. And so I hop in, I compete, I got first in my first show, and that just starts an ego addiction, and now I'm here.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's one thing I personally didn't have the luxury of getting ever, as when I started in strongman, they always lumped the weight class athletes into the higher weight classes, so U80 and U90 didn't even have classes for probably the first 3 years of my competing, or at least we didn't ever have enough athletes to fill out the class, so I was, my very first year at Provincials in 2016, I was lumped with the U105s like Jesse Campbell and Stefan Oglaf, I think is his name, and stuff like that. So there was never I won a thing or anything of that nature. I was always on the bottom rung of the totem pole, punching my way up. So I think that's kind of gone since then a little bit. But I also I found personally, at least, I don't have issues with losing because of that. Because I started at the bottom, I was so used to getting my ass beat, for lack of a better term. Once you learn how to accept loss and look at a learning opportunity, it's a lot easier to go through any type of competition. You don't beat yourself up as much. And you can come back and take critical advice away from that, I would say. So then, obviously, kind of fell into the strongman, as happens to most of us. Usually we get peer pressured into it, and then you do it once, you're like, oh wow, this is really fun. What would you say has been the most exciting part of the strength endeavor for you? What's the most rewarding so far, at least just in your own strength sports career? Not that we get paid for this.
Career, yes. I'm trying to think of a proper word for it, but almost it's almost like an underdog feeling.
Yeah.
Where being somebody who's always competed in the lightweight class, we're still lifting things that are the same size as the open dudes. So you get little 5'8" Jared walking out there and just vipering a big log, which nobody else did before, and the crowd just loves that. They just eat that up.
Yeah.
Having, going through that, having everybody, unexpectedly cheer for you so aggressively, and then have people come up after and just be like, dude, that's insane. How are you even doing these things? You're so small compared to the other people, which, backhanded compliment, but that's probably the most rewarding thing. That's, whenever people ask me, my favorite parts of this, that's what jumps to the forefront every time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely understandable. I feel like a lot of athletes kind of fall into the same thing. At least Well, I mean, anyone, even open weight athletes, like it's the cool things of just being able to go out there and a kid sees you do something, they're like, wow, that person is literally like a superhero in a lot of sense. Like you deadlift a car, and kids are like, you lifted a car, that's crazy. And then they compare you to like these wild heroes and stuff like that. So yeah, it seems like for all of us, especially when you're smaller and you happen to do something the same as an open weight or faster than open weights, and then the open weights are like, hey man, that was wild, and come give you the tap on the back. And yeah, they're like, you're little, how'd you do that? But it was crazy. And you're like, you're cool, but we all got that desire to be larger. It kind of comes with the territory of the sport, but at the same point in time, it's like we aren't all destined to be 300 pounds or don't want the health risks and concerns that kind of come with it. But
Yeah.
I feel you there. So, rolling around to the actual strength side of things and coaching and whatnot, what do you feel like in the last? Because how long have you been actually coaching now? Like working with things of that nature, starting off as a coach.
We're coming up on I think we've passed 3 full years of properly being in the coaching world.
Yep.
I've been certified and helping people for longer than that, but like officially being employed and making a living off of it. I think we're coming up on 3 full years.
Okay. So, for you, when you started, did you always want to pursue the avenue of strength, or did you like the pursuit of athletics? Like, did you want to work with sports teams? Like, was strength always kind of the pinnacle for you, or were you just happy to more or less go in and change people's lives, that kind of thing?
No, strength has always been the thing that's driven me through all of this, even before I knew that strongman had weight classes or that you could do things like powerlifting as just a small dude. Like when I didn't know that weight classes existed, it was still, the goal was always just keep getting stronger and progressing this way. There was never any interest for me personally in like athletics of, say, like ball sports.
Yep.
Or even something like bodybuilding. I just find that incredibly boring.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Which is understandable. Yep.
yeah. So I've been training for strength sports unintentionally the entire time outside of the calisthenics stint during COVID. As for coaching people, originally the plan was to get into like physiotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
but then I learned that that's like another 8 years of school.
Yeah.
And that was a massive deterrent. So I still enjoy learning all of that, and I apply it to the coaching that I do now. But obviously, it's not official. I'm not a doctor or anything.
Yeah.
But I incorporate all the things that I have learned and continue to learn in with the strength training for my athletes and my Gen Pop clients.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that's definitely an undersight or undervalued thing, at least in a lot of coaches. Now, specifically in strength sports, like, because everyone and their grandma is a strength coach now, especially in the sport of strongman. I think it's underappreciated the fact that there are people that are very much so still involved in continuing education, reading up on things, and also taking aspects from very important other career pursuits like physiotherapy, kinesiology, that kind of stuff, and then applying them to athletes. Because strongman, yes, the goal is to get as strong as humanly possible, but keeping that person a functioning human is very, very critical. In the sport, we do cause a lot of imbalances, issues, injuries, and making sure that you're aware on addressing, not diagnosing, but creating preventative plans for that and addressing the issues as you do see them become apparent is a critical component that I feel like not a lot of people have, just due to the lack of continuing education or pursuing those even specific details, and that takes a more in-depth eye, I would say.
Yeah.
So for yourself, initially pursuing the physiotherapy and things like that, what kind of avenues have you continued to explore with trying to stay up to date and stuff like that? Like, what are your go-to resources for trying to continue education, that kind of stuff? Like, where are you looking at for educational material?
A lot of what I get my info from is physios and RMTs a lot of them have YouTube channels that have been around for 10 plus years now.
Yep.
Whenever I run into somebody with a pain or an issue that I'm just unfamiliar with, I just spend like the next week learning as much about said problem as possible via those channels on YouTube for the ones that have been around for a long time and I know are actually good at what they do.
Yep.
I also have multiple RMTs in town here that we refer clients to back and forth.
Yep.
So if I can't find the answer online through these ancient YouTube channels, I will reach out to them, and they will either have a phone call and we'll go over what the solution would be to these problems, or they've got a textbook and they can just ship it over to me for a week so I can actually figure out what the solution is to this problem.
Okay. Well, that's definitely a benefit that you have those kind of working relationships in town. I would say that sometimes people can be quite pig-headed in certain coaching avenues because they're worried about losing clients, especially in a state of where it's your primary source of income. You're like, oh no, if I send this person over there, they're going to, take them away from me, that type of thing. So I feel as though it shows a high level of confidence, your own capabilities, but also the actual fact that you care about your clients and you're trying to ensure that you're providing insight and learning and knowledge. And I think that's a very, very valuable thing for a lot of coaches that is forgotten sometimes.
Yeah. At the end of the day, athlete or a gen pop, the goal is to just better their life via the sport or via just making them healthier. And if I don't have the tools to do that, there's not much I can do about that other than send them to somebody who does, right?
Yeah, for sure. And referring people is something that it's always a critical component. Like, I mean, could I help someone potentially prep for a bodybuilding show? Yeah, sure, but there's better coaches out there for that than myself, right? And knowing when you're capable versus when you could provide a referral to someone who's even more capable is a big kind of thing, right? So understanding where you're at in your coaching career also has to be a comfort thing too, right? And be like, hey, is this best for me or is it best for the client type thing?
Yeah.
So with like, now when we actually get into talking about like designing programs for strength and stuff like that, what would you say like your favorite methodology in breaking down the actual programming side of things is right now? Like if you have a client that rolls in, stuff like that, like what gets you excited about programming, if anything at all, for strength?
I've never really thought about that.
Asking the hard questions.
Yeah. So I've genuinely always loved building programs.
Yeah.
Even when I was just a typical little gym rat, building programs for your friends over and over again, or you learn something new and you're like, oh man, I should build a program just centered around that. I used to have like 400 Google Docs that were just program drafts. I didn't run a single one of them. I just really liked putting those pieces together to try to hit the optimal numbers for volume and intensity and depending on if you're like rotating things or periodizing things. I just really liked building those. So I get a new client that comes in with a whole brand new set of issues or things that they have to learn. And just building the program itself is the exciting part. Like coaching them is later, but talking to them, figuring out what pieces that I have to work with so that I can put something together that's actually going to work for them. I don't know if I have an answer as to why I find it so exciting, but
no, that's fair. It tickles the brain in a special way, right? I understand.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy it as well in that sense. I think that goes a long way. As programming is really like a heavy foundation for any successful athlete, because like the biggest component, as you and I at least know, is that like sleep is paramount, your ability to recover, nutrition, consistency, and then a well-designed program, where it's like if you have a well-designed program, like then you're going to go a lot further, because there's lots of athletes out there that have great work ethics, but just are essentially like banging their head against the wall because they followed 8 different people on YouTube and slapstick stuff together with coaches, who don't truly understand like even linear progression and stuff like that. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll just like randomize things because I see it on YouTube every other week and let's change this or change that. I'm sure we all know someone like that, right?
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, having a base understanding of that and also getting excited about the science behind it and how to try and keep people progressing and finding new ways to utilize the many systems that are out there. I feel like shows kind of in even the team's athletes and the successes that they've had. A good example of that, I would say, is Tyson DeLay, who's our current U90 national champion from last year. Tyson, before we started working together, he was one of the first clients for Ronin, as well as Will Murray. Tyson's work ethic is very, very, very high. He was working with some coaches from a very like archaic style system where they just overload him with volume, not take into account certain supplements he was or wasn't taking beforehand. And Tyson will do pretty much whatever you put down on the program for him. So it was essentially sitting down, talking to him, asking what his sleep looks like, what his nutrition looks like, how he was feeling on the old style of programming, and then building something that was specific to him that wasn't going to burn him out too quickly. Because he already had consistency down. He had good nutrition for himself down. Sleep was something he still struggles with, and we have worked on and tried improving. But he went from essentially like a dead last U80 and even U90 type region of space within the span of a year and a half to like mid-pack, and then all of a sudden in year 2 he was fighting in contention for podium spot pretty much 3 years in a row. He was second in 2022, 2023, and then 2024 he actually won his first title. So it goes to show that in the span of years, if you're willing to put in the work and the effort and trust your coach too, because that's one thing I feel like a lot of people don't realize, is that strength sometimes isn't an overnight occurrence, and even it's not a pursuit of 6 months. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get there. So with yourself, where have you personally found the most growth and development in terms of your own strength progressions now? Like, what do you find that you're excelling with in the last little bit? In terms of programming wise, like what kind of numbers, sets, stuff like that, do you feel like you're truly working to improve things?
I feel like even though they're still not good yet, all of my carry events outside of sandbag have dramatically improved compared to the other years.
Yeah.
If we go, and we use frame as an example, the timber frames that Kelowna likes to use, the first year that popped in, I believe it was only 405. Mm-hmm. And I completed almost half of the event. I almost made it one length instead of the 2. And then the next year I come back and it's there again, and it's bumped up 50 pounds, but I made it 3/4 of the way. Small, good improvement. And then it got bumped up again another 50 pounds the following year again. It wasn't like a full year, but it was like beginning of the year show and provincials, end of the year show. Yeah. And that was the first time I finished it, and that was fantastic. Mm-hmm. But now we look at things, and I needed knee wraps to actually finish that, because I was just simply wasn't strong enough in my legs to stop them from popping backwards and hyperextending, which for those that have never done that, it essentially just feels like you're tripping from your knees instead of your feet. Really just doesn't work good for carrying things.
No, definitely not.
At the provincials this year, it was only like a 495 frame, but I didn't need the wraps. I just had regular sleeves, and I ripped that thing down in, it was like 10 seconds.
Oh, no. This year? No.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 seconds, because it was only one length.
Yeah, it was like
0.1 second behind the strongest U80 in BC. Mm-hmm. So, like...
Another Ronin athlete.
Yeah. Gosh darn Robin.
Yeah. Got a nice little rifle going.
I have people at my gym that know him just via me being like, I'm just going to get my revenge on this guy. Because apparently I talk about that enough that they all know who he is now.
That's one thing I find as an athlete can be quite motivating. Like, so last year I had a world level, or technically world champion arm wrestler come out here for arm wrestling seminar and stuff like that, Todd Hutchings. And one thing that really stuck with me from that seminar and hanging out with Todd and talking to him is that he started in the sport extraordinarily late. But his entire mindset around arm wrestling and just pursuing goals and things like that is not striving for perfection, but striving for excellence. So in that sense, is like he's just looking to get a little bit better every single time and work on piecework. Because when he started initially in the sport, the first year or so, he went to a contest where they had cool trophies. Essentially, it was like a giant gorilla down in Ohio, I believe it was, or Michigan. I think it was the Michigan. And he was like, hey, if I could win one of these trophies, that would be pretty much like a life achievement, because he started, I think, at like 35 or 37, so which is quite old for most athletic endeavors. And then inside of a year, he got that and like clear-cut the entire competition. He's like, oh shit, what do I do now? Because he was just striving for a singular goal, or like perfection in that sense. And then he's like, okay, well, if I could, be top in the country, that would be super cool. And then he beat one of the greatest of all time at year 3, John Brzenk. And he's like, okay, well, now what the fuck do I do? He's like, I've essentially come to this point where he's like, I beat one of the best arm wrestlers considerably ever, pound for pound. And he's like, what do I do with myself? So he went back because he had to adjust his training. He's like, I'm just going to try and be better than that version of myself last time. And eventually, if I keep being better than that version of myself, I can progress further as opposed to chasing specific goals or specific people. Rivalries are good to kind of push you initially and provide additional motivation or discipline, but I think we still need to look inward and strive more for that excellence sense, because if you're better than yourself last time and you were only 5% better, but said competitor is looking at you and it's like, I just got to stay slightly in front of this guy as opposed to focusing on improving himself, that's where you get the fall behind, right?
Yeah.
So
I look at all of my training as trying to be better than my last week's self.
Yeah.
I just like having a rival for the day of the competition.
Yes.
Just something to lock in on.
So, in my own experience, I actually had the exact same thing happen in my arm wrestling side of things that I pursued here. When I initially started arm wrestling, I started down in Edmonton, at the Edmonton Extreme Club there, and I started with an individual named Evan Ferguson. Evan was above me in all shapes and forms. It was just, he lives, breathes arm wrestling a lot and is very wise. So for me, I was like, hey, if I could ever beat Evan, that would be super cool. And it took me the last 2 years, and then this year in February, I was at a competition in Hinton. It was a tournament, and I think I got Evan first on the left arm, which is my usual stronger arm. I beat him. However, after beating him, I lost entire motivation for the rest of the game. I'm like, I beat Evan. I don't care what happens now. Where if I had just looked at that like, okay, that's cool, but I still have the rest of the competition. If I set up like, I still need to be better than myself last time I was at this competition, I feel as though I could have still performed a little bit better. However, because I just set the goal of beating Evan, the rest of the day was like, I don't really care, right? Because I achieved that goal that I set. Now in strongman, I feel like that's a little bit different because the contest itself, after you beat them for the day and you're done. But individual opponents, if you still have to go against them again and again, or even let's say if you're like, hey, I just want to beat Robin in overhead, and then you beat him, and you're like, oh, I've done it. It's like, if you pull your foot off the gas due to those goals, it can become slightly problematic in the sense of you get complacent or comfortable. And even if you win a national championship.
Do you set your goals? So when I'm breaking down goals, either for a competition or just the year's training, there's always like the big overarching goal. So for this year, the goal is to get first in U80. But then there's sub-goals underneath that just apply extra points to the big goal. So it's like, it was like get first at provincials. Didn't quite happen, but oh well. Beat Robbins on that list. Like, there's just small little things that just don't stop the big goal from going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I find that helps. If I set enough small things to keep me busy throughout the year, and then the biggest goal is right at the end of the year, there's nothing that's really going to stop me from being motivated partway through.
Mhm. No, and I think that's just intelligent goal planning, right? So it's like setting those short-term realistic goals. However, certain ones, at least when I set goals, I like to try and set measurable goals against myself, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to say that I'd like to get certain lifts to X, Y, or Z, and then placing in contests, yes, there are certain ones where you'd like to do certain things. Obviously, like winning nationals is an excellent goal in that respect because, yes, it's the end of the pillar. But what realistically do you need to get to your unmeasurable type goals? So it's like if you look at past nationals and the required amount or required repetition, speed for certain events, and then be like, I know that the average winner had X, Y, and Z per event. So then if you take those and break them down and be like, okay, well, I know on overhead press, the average winner in most things, even looking at like a world's level, in a 60-second time limit, if it's axle, clean, and press, however it's press away at our nationals, you look at the average repetition time is usually 3 to 5-ish seconds. So you're like, how many times can I get those specific movements inside of my 60 seconds? Usual winner, even at the highest level, is about 12 reps on the top scale of anything, realistically, unless it's a simple event like a press away where you don't have that clean portion, and then you could look at 12 to 15. So just building stuff off that, I think, is a good way to do it, because then if you hit those key markers, you set yourself up for success to achieve the winning of nationals, but it's a byproduct of those small measurable goals. I think that's how you do it. And I have the same kind of goals as well on my own board. It's like I have deadlift 700 pounds, so it's still one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm going to plunk away at it. I could also make measurable little goals as sub goals on how do I get to deadlifting 700 pounds, or it could be I need a front squat at X, Y, and Z, or I need a safety squat bar good morning at this based on whatever the weaknesses are. And that's just something that comes with time and learning what is best for each specific athlete. So in that sense, for your athletes, like let's say we have a female who has had a breakout kind of year and now is qualified for a world's contest, like the Arnolds. How are you setting goals for someone like that yourself?
I mean, in my head, step one is always figuring out if they can be competitive at that show. So looking at the weights, if they're already available, or the past weights to see if they're in that caliber. I don't think about time so much as can you not zero it first.
Mm-hmm.
That's always step one. Outside of that, you start to hone in and figure out what the actual events are going to be compared to what their strengths and weaknesses are currently.
Yeah.
If they're strong at it and they're not going to zero it and they're going to do well, we don't need to touch an overhead press or a deadlift, right? We don't need to lock into those as much. If the struggle is stability, leg strength, those things, we're going to just focus on that until they're at a level where we could confidently say that they'll be like in the middle-ish. They're not going to become dead last.
Yep.
They're going to do decently at every event. And then after that, it's just refinement and trying to slowly move them up based on who they're going against. That whole intelligent planning.
So from a different perspective, because how I like to set goals is not necessarily inquiring if someone's going to zero it, but look at the time between contest and when they have potentially like signed up for example. So I have a specific athlete whose deadlift is slightly lacking from where they need to be at a specific contest. I look at the time frame, I'm like, can we get them there? I'm like, where are they strong already? And what their goal and expectation is for the contest. Because we don't necessarily like, I personally don't like dictating and telling someone, hey, you should or shouldn't compete at something. If they want to go because it's an experience, then I'm going to be like, yes, you should go do this. How can I then facilitate that as a coach, right? So I try not to look at necessarily what they can zero, and then try and build that up in all senses. It depends on their goals. So if they're like, hey, I want to be, let's use strongman as a sense, competitive at OSG. My goal is to be in the top 10. Then I look at their list of current lifts, once again, the average people that are there in the last 4 or 5 years, and then they're like, okay, this is what I need to see. I go back, I review what we currently have, and then I come to them as from a realistic perspective and be like, hey, this is where we're at, this is where we need to be, these are the missing links. Maybe this year isn't the year for that. However, what I do feel like we can get to on X, Y, and Z is this, and then points-wise, if everything goes according to plan, we could fall middle pack. So I think sometimes having that realistic conversation about things is important beforehand as well, as opposed to dictating reality for them. And just trying to frame it in a more positive sense, being like, hey, if this is just for experience, then why not try and just build on, like, yes, increase our potential zeros, or if it's unrealistic, be like, scrap the zeros, we'll just put more emphasis into what we're good at, and then use an off season to bring that up next year, but then try and surprise some people and be like, wow, they actually beat maybe a world champion or a high level caliber person from a different country in something they're already good at. And once again, that's just the alternative, and that's magic about coaching, is there's plenty of ways to go about doing it and sourcing what's going to work for an athlete, I think. So that's one way I like to do it.
I do those things, but when it's like, when we frame something as goal setting, my brain switches it right away to just black and white. So it's like, these are the numbers, these are the objectives. And I will have these conversations with athletes, but it's always after. Mm-hmm. For me, the thought order of process is always like factual data, then feelings and emotions, then we make the realistic plan.
Yeah. No, and that's fair. Once again, that comes from us as people too, right? Because we have to tie into what we're good at initially, and a lot of us instantly go to the logic side of things. For me, kind of starting in more commercial gyms in terms of my employment, where a lot of the people I dealt with were general population, stuff like that. I myself, when I look at my own goals, I'm logical. I'm like, F emotions, get those out here. It's like, what can I do? What can't I do? And this is just reality, tough beans. But having started in the general population, I've learned how to like gently approach things, and usually you get a better buy-in from athletes due to that, right? Because if you're like, hey, I understand what your desire is. However, let's look at chopping that grand desire up into 3 different phases, right? So then you could even look at like a programming system, like you're programming someone for the Olympics. So in 4 years from now, our goal is, absolute world level top 10. So what do we need to achieve in year 1, 2, 3, and 4 moving forward to get to that point, right? So you build that long-term plan, but you have to get that emotional buy-in beforehand. Because if they're not emotionally bought into it and they're like, hey, this guy only cares about the bottom line, the numbers, the details, they start to burn out too as athletes, like having been there myself and whatnot. When you don't feel like a coach is necessarily invested in you the same way you're invested into them, the program, that kind of stuff, then you're like, why am I trusting this person, right? Not everyone's like that. Some athletes are like, give me my program, I'm just going to put my nose down and go hard. And that's also the learning as a coach, is how to work with numerous different types of people and build out what works best for them. So it's one of the many challenges of coaching in general and strength application, because not all strength athletes are super nose to the grindstone individuals. Some require a much more delicate touch, and that kind of segues even into competition day. So for yourself, what do you find challenging the day of as an athlete?
As an athlete, I'll give you like a couple different things. The first one is my most notorious one, and that's forgetting chalk, which has screwed me over in at least 5 different shows. But that, we'll just lump that into, I forget to do certain things that I normally do just because there's so much going on. I don't know if I'm going to call it just everything is like the energy is too high and it's too exciting, or if I'm just too scatterbrained. I don't know where to put that, but I forget things, be it mouth guard, chalk, smelling salts, to properly hydrate between events. So I'm bad for that. I have since fixed that in getting somebody else to manage that for me.
That's good.
But that's a bad one. So we use like provincials as the goal.
Yep.
I really struggle to go into the day, to finish the day when I know that it's not going to have the outcome that I wanted it to have.
Mm-hmm.
So event 4 rolled around. If I won it, event 5 would have been the tiebreaker. If I lost it, I basically just lost the day. It was just me and Robin at provincials. So when I lost that one by, I think that was the half a second event, I just my brain just shut off. It's like, well, there's no real point. I'm still going to go and do the last event, but I'm not going to give it 100% like I otherwise would have.
Mm-hmm.
And as my girlfriend would put it, you get really moody. So
that's fair.
Those would be my top 2 biggest struggles: is keeping a level head. I don't get angry, but I get down and really hard on myself if it didn't go the way that I needed it to go.
Yeah.
And then also being too forgetful.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So now, on the flip side, if you were coaching you, how would you then try to handle an athlete like that, knowing that those are their potential issues or problems leading into a general day? What would you do to try and course correct that?
So the forgetful one is easy because I know exactly how to solve that problem. I just make sure I go up to them 2 or 3 times before each event to double check that they have all the things that they need. Or if I know that they've got only 2 or 3 more people before it's their turn, it's like, okay, you go over them, like, did you put your chalk on? Is the liquid chalk dry? Like, I just be the person that I need for them.
Yeah.
As for the beating themselves up and emotions, that one's hard, and that varies person to person. Sometimes you just have to chat with them, show them that they've actually come a lot further than they thought they would already. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just getting them hyped up and angry again. You're just going to have to play into their personality so that they finish the day the way that they need to, so that they're not going to be disappointed tomorrow.
Yeah.
Even if it's not going to change the outcome one little bit, in that moment, my goal is to always make sure that when they think about it the next day or the next week or the next month, that they're not disappointed with what happened because they got stuck in the moment.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. So now, from an outside perspective, potentially implementing different styles of tools, do you think it would be beneficial for yourself then to break down each event as an individual competition in your mind and get you to preset expectations? That way you're not going in there being like, well, I'm just going to try and win the entire day, but take each event individually. Like, let's say axle clean and press, you're like, okay, worst case scenario, I get 5 reps. Best case scenario, I get 8. And then you hit those, either you fall right in that range, you do better or less, and then you're like, okay, I did what I want. I set out expectations, so now I can't be upset about it. And then if you theoretically hit your high-end expectations of each day, do you feel like you as an athlete would be in a better place mentally as opposed to setting that overarching goal of perfection as opposed to striving for those little brief moments of excellence?
I would say it depends. If that specific show is one where I have one rival that I'm trying to beat, if I fall within the range of the range goal that I set and they still beat me, I'm probably not going to be happy with it. If it's just one of those shows where I'm showing up and I'm doing it at a weight class up so I don't have to cut and it's just for funsies, if I set those expectations ahead of time, it'll go a lot better.
Yeah.
I'm still not going to be super thrilled if if I got last, even if I did well, all things considered, because getting last just kind of sucks. But I take the day a lot lighter if I know ahead of time what I would be happy with later. Yeah.
That's fair. So Then, segueing into your current competition coming up, you do have Canadian Nationals here next week.
Yeah. Oh, it's just,
Oh no, the
I
stress. No,
know.
yes, don't do this to me. Um,
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the water cut starts.
yep, yep. So now, as
Ugh.
an athlete and whatnot, I think this falls more into potentially the psychology of competition, competing, right? Because you said that you don't like to try and finish out the day super strong. Now, obviously, when it was just you versus Robin, yes, it's essentially a black and white picture to a degree. You need 3 events over his 2. It's as simple as it is. On a stage like this, and even for yourself now as a coach, when you know there's more than 3 athletes, anything can theoretically happen, right? So do you feel as though trying to set those ranges on a larger scale competition, yes, you want to beat Robin, I understand you want to win nationals, but do you feel as though you could set yourself up better for mental success with a system like that? Also, even for your other athletes, do you feel as though setting those specific expectations in advance, like the night prior, would help? And then again, reaffirm them the morning of. So in case like you had a bad sleep, you didn't eat well, so it's like you set something the night prior, you're like, hey, this is what I expect to do tomorrow. This is my absolute minimum. This is like everything goes perfect. I'm super duper like this is thrilled. Like above what I expect to do type thing. And then the
Yeah,
morning
I
of,
think
rinse and repeat.
I, I think that would definitely help. Um, I have I only have one athlete that's going to nationals now. The other one dropped out
Yeah.
due to past injuries. But the one that I have going, I just constantly need to remind her that she has done about 10 strongman days this year, that we have trained out of hotel and apartment gyms for the most part.
Yeah.
And the fact that she podiumed at provincials, literally doing 2 proper sessions beforehand, is fantastic. She's struggling with a lot of these national weights.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough time to get her strong enough to do them.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to remind her that the fact that she's at nationals, despite not training for it at all, really, because she's just been doing career flipping and training for all that, is astounding. I don't want to set those goals and have it be wrong because something stupid happens because she's not prepped for it.
Okay.
So I'm struggling with it in that regard.
Yeah.
For myself, it
Mm-hmm.
would certainly be helpful, especially because I'm not used to competing with a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
I'm used to just like 4 at the most, because there's
Yeah.
not very many U80s in BC.
Nope. Not that all compile together at any given time. That's the unfortunate part about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So for your athlete then, what do you feel like is the best approach for you to move forward kind of going into the coaching scenario for her? Is it just setting out like this is more of an experience for you? You look back where you were a year ago, look at where you've come to with the minimal amounts, like what is your goal as a coach in this scenario for her specifically?
My goal as a coach is to just help her be proud of how far she's come, and only doing strongman for a year and only training strongman for like 3 months at the very beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Reminding her that this is not a normal outcome. You're actually doing exceptionally well, even for people who have trained properly for this. I just want her to look back on this show and this year as something to be extremely proud of, even though it didn't quite go the way that she initially planned.
Okay. And then what are her expectations leading into it? Have you asked her directly what she would like to try and accomplish? And have you looked at them from that reality perspective too? Like what are her actual goals going into it?
She just wants to not zero things.
Okay. Fair enough.
She just wants to complete every event, and that would be good. And I'm fully confident that she can complete every event, except the pressing is going to be a coin toss.
Fair enough. So then how are you overcoming that now in the final week leading up to that? What are you doing for reassurance? And how are you navigating that obstacle?
With this last week, I've had, so the struggle for her is the clean, because she's had not even 2 months of practicing axle cleans, either no access or no shows with it. So it's just a brand new thing for her. We've done a lot of light axle cleans, just trying to get that rhythm going, get a consistent flow for that movement itself.
Yeah.
We've done a few sessions of the heavy ones where she just hasn't quite got it. That was like a month ago. I switched directions to focusing more on just making the clean actually clean.
Yeah.
And that's been the main focus. I'm still throwing in practice for the other events, but again, her access to things is so limited that there's not much practice we can do at this point, especially the last 3 weeks, where it's literally just been dumbbells up to like 60 pounds, and then once a week she'll have access to a barbell and an axle bar.
Yeah.
So big emphasis on go hard that day, make sure that you can still do the clean, make sure that we can still hit the deadlift weights accordingly, and the rest of the days is just endurance and coordination.
Yep, pretty much. That's fair. Good, definitely a good way to go about it. It's challenging. I've had athletes before that have worked on the road and essentially had to take like barbells and plates with them, and they work out in gyms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I also happen to have been quite lucky when I started pursuing strongman a little bit more seriously and whatnot. Some of the coaches I worked with were quite capable. One of them being Cale Beck from the States, who is a high caliber U80 strongman. He also developed a book for training strongman, like without implements. So I did learn a lot of valuable techniques from him and how to do that and still make it carry over. And one of the biggest things too is trying to mimic event specificity. And an axle clean is like something, yes, it's hard to do without an actual weight and load, but practicing the continental clean with even like a broomstick to a belt and then just going through the movements, repeating, and then also even the mental aspect of it is like visualizing it with more weight, acting like it's super heavy, and trying to get more of the neurological component. Because that's a big thing when it does come to strength, is that a huge portion of your actual top end absolute strength is a neurological response. It's not just what your muscles can do, it's how primed and ready your brain is for that day.
Yeah.
And I think the missing link for some newer strength coaches is they don't truly understand how important that side of the mental aspect is, and that some athletes, if they aren't neurologically primed properly, are going to fall quite short.
On the topic of practicing the clean with a broomstick, you can say that to a lot of people, and they will think that that is the stupidest thing in the world.
Yeah.
How do you convince them to do that?
Okay, so then I just relay it back to their goals. It's a very simple thing. So if someone wants to excel and do well in an event, but they don't have access to the implement, then I say, well, if we look at what your goals are, you don't want to zero this event. If you practice with a broomstick every single day of the week, it's essentially greasing the groove. It's teaching your body how to do that movement properly and efficiently. And if you use the mental side of that, or component of telling your body this is really heavy, and you slam with 150% through every portion of the motion, your body's going to respond and still try and fire at 100%. Obviously, yes, the load would be needed at some point in time, but if you do that type of movement consistently, then you're going to get the end result of what you want. If you think it's stupid and dumb, that's fine. However, it's going to directly reflect your performance the day of. It's your goals, not mine. I'm just trying to help facilitate it, right?
Yeah.
So, once again, it's that gentle touch of explaining something and relaying it back to them and trying to convey emotion. It's like, how are you going to feel if, you look stupid in the gym, you train with a broomstick 5 days a week, but the day of you actually hit that clean and press clean, what kind of emotional response, like what are you going to feel? How's it going to feel? Tell me what it's going to look like. And they're like, oh, it's going to be crazy, the crowd's probably going to go wild, especially if I struggle a little bit, and I hit it, and then it's going to be a sense of relief. And then I'm like, well, what if you don't hit it? How's that going to feel? And for some people, you utilize that pain or a negative emotion as a driving factor, and they're like, oh, it's going to be terrible. My friends and family are watching on live stream. It's something I could be able to do, but I can't. And then you just be like, all right, so which of those options would you actually like to do? Do you want to feel kind of dumb because you're practicing with your broomstick 10 minutes of the day? Or do you want to have, the nation cheer you on and go absolutely crazy because you hit it? Most people are going to be like, okay, I'm going to grab my broomstick and practice. So
That's a good way to put that.
Yeah. But once again, that's athlete dependent, right? Some athletes are going to be like, nah, fuck you, I'm not doing it. Unfortunately, some of those athletes just aren't going to aspire to hit certain goals, right? Because it comes down to the willingness to put in time and work, and then also what they're willing to do at the end of the day. And I do have athletes that are at the higher level, and a lot of their potential outcome at certain shows that are on the horizon is dependent on the accessory work or the time and effort they put in or the exact weights they should be doing but haven't been doing. And I'm well aware of it, but I'm not certain if they are. So you can only do so much too as a coach if someone themselves is not willing to put their ego aside and do the other little things, right? And that's also partially buying into you as a coach, but it's also just buying into the fact that, if you trust us and you're doing what you're supposed to do, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like if you look at the amount of champions we have, provincials, like we've taken people from ground zero to not good competitors to high level competitors. So it's like there's something that's working. It's just, yes, it may not necessarily be night and day for everyone. And we may have to rebuild some things or start back at square one, but that's like any type of sport, right? Like for the most average people, you don't step into a sport as the greatest or in the top 10%. Yes, some people get away with it, but eventually when you do get to that upper level or elite level of true competition, then you can't rely on genetic skills either. That's when you have to apply genetics with hard work, and that's where you truly see the difference in top level champions and competitors, right? So I think that'll be a good example at the Canadian Nationals too, of seeing people that have coasted through with genetic gifts and certain aspects like that, versus people that are putting in hard work and time and effort and understand they have to pay their dues in a sense to truly get up there. And that's just one of those things. It's like if you're not willing to go find the equipment to try and train with it, I will once again give credit to Tyson, is that Tyson built random janky stuff in his yard to train with. And like I've used some of it as not pretty stuff. However, he was trying to replicate those movements as close as he could. And when he got to nice equipment to use, it showed, right? And then eventually he luckily has a great gym up there through Rebel Fit with Stefan, and the Williams Lake crew is super lucky to have such a passionate individual with the means to provide a gym. And now they have great equipment to train with, and it's showing in all of their training, right? So it comes a long way, I would say. But it's really just the buy-in from the athletes and learning what is the motivator or way you as a coach can help motivate them. So, what do you feel like is the most critical part to a peak for an athlete leading up to something that's big like this? If this is their year-end goal, what do you feel like is the most critical component that you as a coach have to monitor?
For the athletes that I've worked with, the issue a lot of times comes down to recovery, and from their perspective, it's holding themselves back. From my perspective, it's just being respectful with your volume and intensity. I've had several athletes, or even Gen Pop people going into their first show. I'll just treat them like an athlete. We'll still peak them properly and everything. But they mismanage their recovery outside the gym. And when they're in the gym, they see, this weight at RPE 7, and they don't believe in RPE 7. They only believe in 10. Or they're like, no, I can definitely do 50 pounds more than that for an RPE 7. And they just push way too hard in the gym, and they don't chill out enough outside the gym. So managing their recovery, I would say that I really start to harp on people like a month out from a show, when we've got like 3 more weeks of training and then like a deload week before, making sure that they're actually sleeping, that if possible they're toning back on their consumption of certain substances, not steroids, alcohol and weed and whatnot, so that they can actually recover properly. And then when they're in the gym, getting them to just be honest with themselves and actually listen to the program. It goes back again to a lot of the things that you've talked about today. Ask them if they care more about this one gym session feeling really cool, or the competition that they've been training for 3 to 6 months. What do they care more about? And you kind of have to have that conversation with them like 3 times a week, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what we signed up for as coaches, I think.
Yes, I think to a degree that eventually some of us get to the point where you can be a little more selective with the people that you work with. Yes, there's still a degree of babysitting, for lack of a better term, with any athlete, where you have to follow up, be like, hey, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Like, stop being an idiot, right? This isn't the Instagram show. It's like, do you want to be a national champion, or do you want to pursue the top 10 in the world or a world record? If not, if you're just doing this for the likes, then that's fine too. But understand that come game day, you're going to look pretty stupid, is the reality if you're maxing out all the time and falling off the program. And yeah, just like complete another program like negligence. And then also the other thing too that can happen on the same flip side is that people also do too much or try and cram things in. I definitely have had a couple clients who, like you, don't prioritize that recovery portion or sleep, and they're like, oh, I'm falling behind in the gym. I tried to, I missed the session, so I stacked on 4 in a row. I'm like, that's not what we're doing. And they're like, yeah, I've only got, a few hours of sleep throughout this week, but, missing a gym session is more detrimental than missing sleep. I'm like, wrong. Hard no. Like, when you look at the truth of what exercising is and getting strength is like, we damage things in the gym, but where you actually get stronger is outside the gym, right?
Yep.
So you need that sleep and that nutrition aspect, and a lot of people are like, everyone knows how to work hard in the gym at the end of the day. Like, we all know how to get pumped, we know how to push heavy weights and go to absolute failure, but how you recover mentally and physically outside of the gym is where you truly see success and gains. And that can be the biggest and most challenging thing to convey to athletes, especially ones that are newer, going to their first large-scale contest, because they feel like they should be doing even more, when in reality, they're doing too much, and you need to be like, no, we're dialing this back now, like, nothing else. So, but that's the magic of it, right, is learning how to find that happy balance for individuals, and also how to relay that. And some people, you have to be a little bit harsher and be like, hey, you're being a fucking idiot, stop, go, no more gym, go sleep, rest,
Go sleep, eat steak, go sleep.
Yep. And that can also be present too, is that they might not even realize, but they could be showing signs of overtraining and whatnot, where they get those wild mood swings. Their body won't let them sleep anymore because they're alert. Their heart rate's super high. They've lost their appetite and all of those other things. So it essentially becomes this snowball effect. And then they're trying to compensate with what's actually causing the issue. And it's our job as coaches to also help recognize that. But that's where good communication comes in too, is talking to people, especially the closer they get to these things. And even some self-reliant clients, it's important to check in and do those types of things to just make sure that, you're following up. Because some clients are super independent, right? Where they're like, no, I'm pretty good. Carrying on and whatnot. But then they don't realize that they're missing out that important piece of communicating with the coach and getting that insight and details about certain things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it's definitely been an exciting little bit here to see the growth of the team and everything like that. Especially because I feel like this year there's a high possibility we could have numerous national champions. I feel like between you and Robin in the U80, we have 3 potential ones in the U90. between Jeremy Patfield, Sergey, and Will. Will's always wild card in that department. U105, we have Jeff and Tyson, then a Ronin alum and Darcy. U120s, we don't actually have anyone this year. And then in the open heavyweights, we have two, which is not terrible. I think Alex Clipper, who's a relatively newer athlete, at least to us, will surprise a couple people in his progress because we've definitely started to hit stride. And he has a lot of raw, natural talent that just was not properly being utilized. And then Kyle Francati, having had a relatively breakout year with winning Alberta Provincials in a relatively deep class of guys, could potentially cause some upsets on some of the favorites for sure. But it's going to be fun. And then obviously we have the female division too, where there's a lot of quality athletes in that department too. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see everyone next weekend and stuff like that, and go from there and apply some
awesome
skills. But any final comments or statements or anything you got running around upstairs that you want to run through before we end this?
No, I got nothing. Yeah. I imagine we're going to have a lot to talk about after Nationals happen, so.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure there'll be numerous things that come up after that, following that, and even before, potentially. You never know. So, but anyway, we'll end it at that, and this is the first episode of Ronin Strength Speaks, and we'll be back again soon with more strength topics and strength athletes from a wide variety of places. Thanks for tuning in. All right, thanks, Jared.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, bye.